Hello and welcome to The Menu, Monocle Radio's food and drink programme. I'm your host, Chiara Rimella. Coming up, we meet the brains behind Southern Thai-inspired restaurant Kolae.
In the northeast, those areas are landlocked, and so coconut cream, this thing that we all think of as integral to Thai cuisine, is actually not a big feature traditionally of those regions.
Also on the programme, we sit down with the woman bringing authentic Tunisian spices to the Nordics.
I went back to Iceland with some samples of the spices that my mom makes from scratch. And then I went testing, doing some Icelandic food with Tunisian spices. And the mix that came between of them was unbelievably good.
Plus, we crown our wine of the month. All that here on The Menu on Monocle Radio. Thai cuisine is amongst the most popular and well-represented internationally, but not all restaurants make a point of highlighting the specificities of the country's lesser-known regional dishes. Andy Oliver and Mark Dobbie were already running uber-successful Thai restaurant Somsa in London when they decided to go even deeper in their obsession for the nation's gastronomy. Their new project, Kolae, focuses on specialties from the south of the country, not only in its fiery flavours but in cooking techniques too. The restaurant's name itself comes from the process of coating skewers in curry-like marinade and grilling them over flames. Oliver and Dobbie fell in love with this cuisine through their travels, so how does their outsider's point of view influence their approach to the menu? I sat down with them in the studio to find out more and started by asking them what Kolae stands for.
It's a Southern Thai restaurant focused on the grill especially, but Southern Thai food generally. Kolae is a family of dishes which are a type of grilled dish that comes from the south of Thailand and is essentially different proteins, most commonly chicken, dipped in a sort of special coconut curry sauce and grilled, and then dipped and grilled. It's a technique almost as much as a recipe. And those dishes are central on our menu. But around that, we've built a menu of Southern Thai dishes that fit nicely together.
What is it about Southern Thai cuisine that is so exciting to you compared to the other sides of Thai cuisine that you had explored until then?
I think that it's as exciting as the other regions, to be fair. Somsa, our other restaurant, kind of focused broadly across the regions. I've worked for people who've done Northern Thai restaurants, and Southern Thai is just another version of Thai food that's out there. And as we started investigating Kolae a bit more, you start to realise that naturally the dishes from those regions fit together a bit better than sort of taking one dish from northern Thailand and mixing with one from the south. That's not to say that they don't work, but they fit together a bit more naturally together in terms of their ingredients and flavour profiles and stuff like that, and the way that it's eaten as well.
What is this flavour profile? If you had to explain how these dishes all fit together, what is the peculiarity, I guess, of Southern Thai cuisine as seen through your eyes?
Yeah, it's an incredibly exciting region, the south. It's really hard to decide when Thai food's so amazing and broad and exciting. As Mark says, each region has their own things that you just could call a whole cuisine, almost like a whole country's cuisine in just one region. And it's hard to choose between them. But Southern Thai food is an incredibly exciting region, and it's quite diverse as well in the south. It's hard to define because there are different almost cooking traditions in the south that come from, as much as anything, different ethnic communities and different histories of those communities. But some of the defining things or common themes of the south are the prevalence of seafood and the prevalence of coconut cream, because coconut groves grow along the coast of Thailand. So actually, in the north and in the northeast, those areas are landlocked. And so coconut cream, this thing that we all think of as integral to Thai cuisine, is actually not a big feature traditionally of those regions. Whereas in the south, it's all coastline in the south, all islands, and on all of that coast is coconut palms. And so coconut cream is this massive presence in the cuisine, and what an incredible ingredient that is. But seafood and spice have a real brightness in the cuisine. Lots and lots of hot chilies, both fresh and dried, lots of black pepper and fresh peppercorns. Those are really prevalent in the cuisine. But then there's these whole different strands. So Thai Muslim, there's huge Muslim communities in the south of Thailand. Actually, the last few provinces as you get towards Malaysia are almost, a majority Muslim. And so Thai Muslim food is a kind of branch of Thai cuisine, if you like, which is a fusion of Muslim cooking traditions and Thai cooking traditions. And that is a part of the cuisine that is very prevalent in the south and almost feels distinct to Thai food. So it's like this whole it's like rediscovering a new cuisine within Thailand. And that's just like one branch of southern Thai food. There is then like big Thai Chinese communities in southern Thailand, and they have their own sort of repertoire of dishes and cooking traditions. And then on top of that, there's, a kind of like what you might almost define as like a coastal island cuisine, which is more simple and very based on seafood and local ingredients, simple cooking techniques, but that's very, very bright, very exciting. So like the southern Thailand is a mixture of all these different things. And so there's so much to explore there. And Kolae is just the start of a journey of exploring that region and those cooking techniques and dishes.
Well, let's take a step back, because obviously even before Somsa, you clearly developed an obsession with Thai food. Where does that come from? When did you first go to the country, and how was this passion born for both of you?
Mine started a long while ago. I'm originally from Brisbane in Australia, and at the time I did an apprenticeship as a chef, mainly cooking European food, but at that time there was a guy called David Thompson who brought out a book that was considered a bit of a Bible for Thai food at the time, and even in the kitchens that I was working in cooking European food, this book was in there, and chefs were just like, what on earth is this? I worked at a restaurant called the Spirit House, which was cooking Thai food, and eventually came to London and started working for David. And it's just kind of been a constant sort of learning curve, which is, I think, what keeps us both really engaged in it, is even after sort of approaching 20 years of cooking professionally and Thai food next year, surprisingly. But there's still so much to learn, and that's what's really great about it and what keeps us engaged in it, I think.
What about your side?
I think like different people gravitate towards different cuisines, different ingredients. And Mark and I think the thing we have in common is that we're just excited by Thai and Southeast Asian food in general, but Thai food, Thai flavors, Thai techniques. Like it just seemed, the ingredients, the flavors seemed like mysterious and exciting and bright and full of life, and big in terms of flavor and big in terms of techniques and ingredients and things that felt surprising. And then that sort of led to a bit of travel in Southeast Asia and eating Thai food there. And also, I think a big moment for Mark and I both was working for David Thompson early in our careers. Me really early in my career, like the first professional kitchen I worked in, as a full-time job was Naam, David Thompson's Thai restaurant, Hyde Park Corner at the time. And actually the first person I met was Mark when I walked through the door, like as someone not knowing my arse from my elbow, and also, asking where the staff room was or whatever. And Mark was at that time on dessert section, pointing me in the direction of the staff room, walking through the doors of a professional kitchen way below the basic standard, in terms of how much I had to learn. And Mark was a more experienced chef at that stage. So I definitely had a hard learning curve at Naam. And I think Mark and I's friendship grew over our shared time there and since.
Well, I think it's interesting that you talk about how you both felt attracted to this cuisine. And I wonder how being fundamentally outsiders looking onto the cuisine changes your perspective of it. Whether the curiosity leads you to perhaps rediscover things that for people are very familiar and therefore they might not think of putting on a menu abroad because they're so used to it. Or what kind of perspective and look you bring into the cuisine, your influences from different traditions as well. How does it combine with trying to do your version of this food?
Well, I think being an outsider has its pros and cons. Like we have some Thai people in the kitchen who, they have an inherent knowledge and understanding of the culture, and like Thai food does have a cultural connection, and they can sort of see that a bit more naturally than we can feel it sometimes. But I think that on the flip side of that, a lot of stuff when we first come across it is completely new to us as an adult, and it's not going to be this kind of like Marmite thing that you might have a childhood memory of and just be like, I really don't like that relish. So that's kind of a good bonus for us, is that we always sort of come at it with a clear perspective of whether we think this is an exciting dish or something that takes our interest. And even beyond like what ends up in the restaurants, there's a lot of stuff that we will eat out in Thailand that we are just eating for the experience and understanding a greater knowledge of the cuisine and stuff. And it might not be something that necessarily ends up on the menu, but it's trying to dig deeper into these traditions and understand where the food comes from and the history of like what that one dish might be, and then trying to do it as honestly as we can when we get back to the UK.
being an outsider, as Mark says, has its pros and cons. And one thing that is great is the excitement you get when you see something for the first time, and that's always been something that's hit us when we spent time in Thailand or just eating Thai dishes or reading cookbooks. It feels so fresh and exciting. And one of the nice things about being outside of Thailand and being excited by Thai food and then having a kind of route to cooking it, that's one of the privileges of running a restaurant or being in the hospitality industry, just seeing something, thinking, wow, this is amazing. People in London might not have seen this that much. Can't wait to share it with people, want to try and cook it, want to try and recreate it. So there's that nice excitement of being outside and trying to recreate something, trying to bring a little bit of what's special about Thai food to a restaurant setting.
So what about the food that's actually on the menu? Some of it I think is quite genius, like the rice biryani crackers were generally impossible to stop eating. But then the chicken skewers are incredible and the little mussels that pop in your mouth are also addictive. Is there something on the menu that you think really encapsulates what you're trying to do with the restaurant? And if you had to pick the one dish, even though it's always impossible to pick just the one, what would it be? And can you describe it to us, please?
Yeah, I think probably the mussel skewers are the one for us, that represent the restaurant. I mean, for a start, it's a Kolae dish. So, it's showcasing that technique. But it's also a dish that's kind of surprising, right? Mussel skewer, you don't normally find mussels on a skewers. Like these mussels, we sort of cook several times. Like they are steamed and then they're picked and then they're marinated in fresh coconut cream and fresh turmeric and black pepper and salt and then smoked over coconut. And then they're skewered and then they're dipped in a special Kolae sauce that we make just for those mussels, which has a little bit of lime juice in, maybe fresh coconut cream and a curry paste just designed for that particular dish. And then they're grilled and then they're dipped and then they're grilled. So by the time they get to the customer, the mussels have been cooked several times over, and in Western cuisine, overcooking mussels is a bad thing, right? Overcooking seafood. But quite often in Thai food, you chuck those rules out. And you would assume that what you get is something that is therefore chewy and, there's something unpalatable about it. But what actually you get is these smoky, soft mussels that have a bit of chew to them, but they're ultimately still soft. And that's the magic of Thai food. And also that dish is a very southern Thai dish. They're found with cockles in the south, but works really, really well with mussels. And it represents the restaurant quite well because Kolae is slightly smaller plates than Somsa. It's got an open kitchen. You can eat at the bar. You can have all the wines by the glass. So something like your mussel skewers are just the kind of thing you can drop in and just have one glass of wine and eat those. And that's part of what we want the restaurant to be, that kind of place where you can come and have the whole menu and eat all the dishes, but you can also just have a glass of interesting wine or a cocktail and some mussel skewers and then hop off. And it's in Borough Market, so that kind of fits with the location. And you serve a little bit of calamansi lime alongside the skewers, which is, again, a citrus fruit, particular to the south of Thailand. So, yeah, I feel like that dish represents the restaurant quite well.
That was Andy Oliver and Mark Dobbie speaking to me at Midori House. This is the menu. We're going to Tunisia now, but via the slightly circuitous route of Iceland and Denmark. Lots of food businesses are born out of a sense of nostalgia for the food of one's home or heritage, and that's the case for Safa Jemai's venture Mabruka too. A Tunisian software developer, Jemai moved to Iceland to study in 2018, and she eventually decided to settle down there to start her own tech company. But she missed her mum's cooking, and to her own North African palate, her new home's gastronomy was a bit of a culinary disappointment. She set out to introduce Icelanders to Tunisian flavours by developing her own spice and seasoning mixes, together with her parents, who now roam the countryside in northern Tunisia foraging for ingredients. The brand they built together has proved popular amongst chefs and home cooks in Iceland, and Jemai is now rolling it out internationally. Our Copenhagen correspondent Michael Booth met Jemai while on a visit to one of her new markets, Denmark.
Safa, we need to do a little bit of background explanation because Tunisia to Iceland, I don't suppose there are that many people that make that migration. Why? How did you end up in Iceland in the first place?
It was totally random. So I remember 2017, I lived in Tunis and I was in software engineering university. And I was totally tired of my life and I wanted to do something completely new.
You were living in Tunisia at that time?
Yes, 2017. So I saw an advertisement about a volunteering internship in Iceland and I decided to jump on and do it. I got accepted and I went to Iceland for the first time, summer 2017, to work as a camp leader. ended up loving it, and I decided to move to Iceland.
What about just Icelandic food? What were your impressions when you first arrived about how the Icelanders eat?
Oh my God, I was shocked. I hope my friends don't hear this. I was completely shocked. Like, if you know the Tunisian food, it's a whole like fast food history, and it's so delicious and so diversified.
And Icelandic food is not?
It is, but in a different way. I mean, we have different food culture, but yeah, I had to find my own ways to make my own dishes. So I would, for example, do lamb and I add some chili or next to it or chili paste to make it like pop up a bit. So after 2 years of living in Iceland, I went back to Tunis to visit my family, and that's where the story came of Mabruka. So I visited them, and then I went back to Iceland with some samples of the spices that my mom makes from scratch. And then I went testing, like doing some Icelandic food with Tunisian spices. And the mix that came between of them was unbelievably good. So I was like, there is something here. So I went once to a restaurant and I talked to the chef. And I was like, I have this idea in my mind, but I don't know if it works. Like I have a software background and I don't know how to do this.
Were you a cook? Did you learn from your mum? What was your background in food?
Yeah, I learned from my mom. My mom was always trying to like teach me recipes, but I never liked to be, pushed. I liked to more explore my own ways. But definitely I learned a few things from her. I hate using recipes. I like to improvise and just put something together and see how it comes out.
So where are they made? They're not made in Iceland, are they?
No. So we have the production in Tunis, north.
And the ingredients include your family, right?
Exactly.
They help you make them.
Yeah, it's basically a family project. And like, I'm so grateful for my family to help from the beginning until now.
So you literally have your parents out on the hillsides picking thyme and mixing and...
Yeah. So my mom had to quit her job and start this with me. My dad is retired, so it was easy to convince him. So I was like, instead of you sitting at home, instead of you sitting at home doing nothing, you can do this with me during the summer, and pick some zatar. So it was fun, and I'm so proud of it now because they're so busy with this. It's so satisfying for me and for my siblings to see my parents doing something that makes them happy, especially for an immigrant that does not live with them. And a lot of people know this. You get worried about your parents if you're not at the same place with them. So I think this created even a stronger bond between us.
And you mentioned picking zatar. Isn't zatar a mix? What is zatar?
So for us, it's a herb. It's like wild thyme that grows naturally on the mountains. And we use it, for example, in the tisane, which is a tea. So we use zatar, mint, and tisane, which is also like a herb. But in other countries, it's a mix that they put it with sesame seeds and other herbs. Yeah.
And I guess we're quite familiar with Moroccan food and Lebanese food. Tunisian food, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
To someone like me who's never been to Tunisia, how would you explain the cuisine simply?
Oh my God, it's really good. So I would tell you that we have such a fresh ingredients, vegetables, and the meat is really good, spicy, but you don't have to eat like very spicy.
Oh, is it quite chili spice?
Yeah.
From cayenne?
Yeah, cayenne, and we have harissa, a lot of harissa chili paste, yeah.
Let's talk about the actual range of products you have.
Yeah.
One that really struck me, we've got it here, is the dried garlic. Now, if I just open up, they come in these lovely sachets.
Yeah.
And if I open up, that smell of dried garlic, dried garlic is normally an awful product, isn't it? This really smells of fresh garlic. What's the secret to that?
It's pure garlic. We buy all our garlic from a female farmer. She makes like around 300 kilos per year. So we bought that, but then it was not enough. So we bought from her friend. So last year we bought 500 kilos. And the work that we have to do from the beginning, it's really hard. So imagine like these, like garlic, it's like a small garlic tree, and you have to take all like the skin. It's all handmade. You take the skin and then you ground it. And then you dry it. Of course, we dry everything with the sun heat. You could feel like in all the spice there is something that is a bit like kicky or spicy. But it's not because it's like a spicy or chili. It's because it's sun-dried. And we use the purple garlic, not the white one. which is milder and the taste like lasts longer. So we dry the garlic and then we bring it back down and then we ground it again and then it lets it like take a moment and then dries it again because you have oil always coming out of the garlic. So we need to take care of that and then we ground it kind of groovy. Yeah.
You do what?
Like groovy, like...
No, well...
No, it's not a word.
The grains are quite big.
The grains, yeah. Like it's not a fine powder.
Yeah. It's groovy.
Groovy. Is it groovy? No.
Is that your bestseller, the garlic?
Yes, it's one of the best sellers. The black pepper, believe it, it's the best seller.
And is that
for
this one
restaurants.
salt and pepper?
This one.
Let's have a sniff.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so floral and kind of mild. Mm-hmm. Where are you selling them? How's it going? How's the business going?
It's going super well. So we both sell for restaurants and for like individuals. They buy on the market and the website. We're selling in Iceland, but we're in the process of starting to sell in Denmark and Sweden.
And they sell in these kind of almost like tea.
Yes.
But you can also buy pots to refill, right?
Yes, so the idea is to encourage people to use sustainable ways for their packaging. So we have these wooden jars, handmade also, that you could buy and use like for a long time. And then when it's done, you use the refill, the paper bag.
And if there was one product and one dish that you were to recommend someone to start with if they were kind of getting into Mabruka, what would it be? What would you make? What would you use?
The lemon mix. I would say the lemon mix, yeah. So it has lemon zest, black pepper, and salt. Every chef tried it. He was like, wow, this is the best lemon zest that I've ever tried. We use it a lot on fish. Also to marinate.
Marinade, yeah.
Yeah, to marinate meat also. And in different sauces or soups.
So I guess the secret ingredient, Tunisian sun, sounds like it.
I think so too. Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. You're listening to The Menu. Now it's time for the week's top food and drink headlines. Here is Monocle's Monica Lillis.
The price of popular ice creams and lollies in the UK have increased by more than 30% over the past 2 years, according to a new survey. This comes as a result of rising costs for producers on energy, labour, transport, as well as basic ingredients, including milk, cocoa and sugar. Analysts at the consumer group Which suggested switching to supermarket own label options that come at a lower price point. Uganda's coffee exports saw a 35% increase in value in 2023-24, according to the country's Coffee Development Authority. This shows a 6% increase in the value of the good from last year, marking Uganda's coffee sector's highest earnings this century. The milestone growth in this market is being largely attributed to the improved quality of the nation's coffee. And finally, this week, Germany appealed Turkey's attempt to give the doner kebab the same protected EU status as Spanish Serrano ham and Neapolitan pizza. This follows a spat that began earlier this year when Turkey applied to register the name doner as its guaranteed traditional speciality in Europe. This would mean the label could only be used by producers using designated production methods for the kebab's meat. However, Germany argues this would create bureaucratic hurdles and increase the price of the beloved street food. Those are the week's food and drink headlines. Now back to Chiara.
Thanks, Monica. You're listening to The Menu. Next up on The Menu, it's the last Friday of the month, so we're joined by Monocle's sub-editor and in-house wine expert Chloé Lake for her pick of Wine of the Month. This time, we're trying Australia's Love You, Love Me Semillon by Charlotte Dalton Wines. Chloé, what a joy to have you back in the studio. Pray tell us, how's the last month of drinking been for you? It's been summer-ish in London. What have you been indulging in?
I mean, heavy emphasis on the ish. It's been pretty cold, so lots of reds. Unusual for this time of year, I think. But yeah, I've been having a few barbecues. So finished off the last bottle that we had very nicely. Went to a picnic. I've had a few sparkling numbers recently, a few pet nats, very summery. A bit of everything, but it has been on the cooler side, so maybe a bit of a heavier red.
I think it's interesting, the country that you've chosen for us today, because we are in fact heading to winter, because we're heading to Australia for the Wine of the Month.
Yeah, we are. I guess Australia is in winter, but for us, very much in summer. So I picked a sort of summery Australian wine. A little bit of a caveat for today's episode is that I haven't tasted this week's wine. So it's kind of going to be a bit of
blind tasting for everyone.
blind tasting all around, which will be fun, I think. But I've picked this because I thought the story was really interesting. I've been going around all the wine shops recently, kind of asking what's in the season, what's, the best thing that they've had. And this was one of the wines recommended to me. The lady that produces it has kind of been behind this business for about 25 years. And it's called Love You, Love Me, Charlotte Dalton. Her actual name is Charlotte Hardy. And when she was younger, her grandfather, who had the name Hardy, used to say to them, love you, love me, when they were kind of like tucking each other into bed at night. So I thought it was a really kind of sweet, just like a very nice thing to kick off with.
Obviously, tucking yourself into bed is a moment when you naturally think about consumption of wine. So
absolutely,
the two things go hand in hand.
Yeah,
surely.
Send you off to bed. It's perfect. So
let's take a step back though, because I would quite like to hear your opinion on Australian wines overall. I mean, so far we've tackled Italy and France, two huge wine producing countries, and Australia is no less. We can talk about so many varieties, so many different regions. But can you give us a bit of a perspective of where this comes from and where it fits within the wider Australian context, and whether you think that, people used to talk about New World wines, but I feel like that's not even really the case with Australia anymore. It's just so established at this point. So where does this fit in that, and where are we at in terms of Australian winemaking?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Australia is huge, both in terms of landmass, but also because of the wines they produce. They have so many, and I think, this term New World is a little bit defunct now, maybe. Back in the day, it was seen as an up-and-coming destination, but it very much can rival the likes of France, Italy, any of the European countries for really great wine. This one comes from a place called Adelaide Hills. So it's South Australia, kind of classic wine country. But because it's in the hills, it's a little bit cooler of a climate, not so much where you'd find your typical reds from like Barossa Valley, where it's very, very hot. This is a lot cooler, produces really nice, fine whites, a good level of acidity, and really great area for wine growing in Australia at the moment.
All right, so let's start with the nose.
Okay. Ooh, I think this smells really nice. What do you think?
It feels quite floral, but very high up, quite citrusy,
Yeah,
maybe?
I agree. I think it's a bit almost like grapefruit in a way. Yeah, and a bit of like lime and lemon. And that's very classic of what you'd find of Semillon, which is the grape. Traditionally comes from France. It's associated with like white Burgundy, Bordeaux, and it's often blended with Sauvignon as well. So if you see any bottles with Semillon, it normally kind of comes in a pair. Also, if you've had Sauterne wine, which is very sweet, kind of a classic dessert wine, that's the grape that is used in it as well. So
do Australia and France share a lot of grapes? I feel like a lot of the time I do see a bit of a parallel between the grapes that are used in the two countries.
There is a bit of a crossover, yes, especially in kind of the cooler regions. You might find some similar white grapes, but they do have their own varieties as well, yeah.
Taste test?
Yeah, let's taste it. I feel like that tastes different on the palate to how it smells. I don't know what you think.
It's quite crisp, intense, right? It packs a punch, I feel.
It does pack a punch. I feel like that's a lot more citric, actually, but it's nice. It almost tastes sparkling in a way.
True.
In the way that it's acidic.
It's almost a bit cidery.
You know what? It's actually really interesting that you point this out, because this wine is kept on the lees. So for anyone who doesn't know what that means, the lees are kind of the sediment from the dead yeast. So they eat the sugars in the grapes when the wine is fermenting, and then they drop to the bottom of the barrel. And some winemakers decide to take them out. Some decide to keep them in for a little while. But I know Charlotte with this wine stirs them around sort of every 2 months. And that creates a very kind of biscuity, bready flavor, which you might also find in cider. So there is kind of a little bit of a crossover there, because it's a little bit hoppy, it's a little bit bready. It is quite acidic, but I think it's refreshing. And also these maybe strong characteristics would mellow with a few years of aging. I think it has great potential to do that, and it would soften, maybe become a little bit more honeyed. You'd end up with a bit of a softer wine.
A big personality, which I understand that Charlotte herself has kind of attributed to the wine, right?
She has, yes. We have a very flamboyant, fun label. I'll just picture, if no one has seen the bottle of the wine, it's a woman kind of falling out of the sky with a big rainbow in the background. And then on the back, she gives a personality to the wine. So I'll just read out.
Let's see if it matches.
Okay. Love You, Love Me is a quirky girl. She's pretty and unique. She's neither bonbon sweet nor tartly sour. She really is trying to be an angelic, straight-laced girl, but there are glimpses of a slightly naughty, mischievous side that peeps through. Love You, Love Me is blissfully unaware of any other chaos around her, and she's perfectly content to see where her journey takes her. Thank you for sharing in my joy by choosing Love You, Love Me, and I hope you adore her as much as I do.
I just feel like that was just so me.
Yeah.
I feel so reflected by that description.
Yeah, we're having our Love You, Love Me summer. So.
I don't know if that's quite my personality, but
that's okay.
I love that Charlotte...
She's an angelic girl that doesn't care, so... That's...
Somewhere out there, there is a Love Me, Love You woman who will feel perfectly represented by this wine, and we dedicate this to her.
We do. Thanks, Charlotte.
It's interesting that you've brought to us a female winemaker, I feel like, because I also commission stories for Confect, Monocle's sister publication. We've commissioned stories about female Australian winemakers and how that didn't used to be quite the norm in terms of the industry, but there's a generation that is coming through. Do you see that happening in Australia? And are there people that you're excited about?
There are a lot of great women winemakers at the moment. I think in countries that were traditionally called kind of New World countries as well, where there aren't as many restrictions in terms of winemaking. There are a lot of great women coming to the fore, particularly the U.S. to California, kind of Washington, Oregon, all really great fertile ground for women and people like Charlotte.
Well, on that celebratory note, let's enjoy this.
Absolutely.
Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Chloe. And that's all for this edition of The Menu. Remember that we are back with a new episode again on Friday at 2000 London time. That's at midday in San Francisco. Also, don't forget to tune into our spin-off show, Food Neighborhoods, for a tour of some of the world's tastiest destinations. I am Chiara Rimella. This program was produced by Monica Lillis, and our sound engineers were Mariella Bevan and Seth Jungu. Thanks for listening, and until next week.